right, grade 11s, what I'm going to do with you is let you guys read through your textbook because it does have enough information on plants. And then I'm going to be taking up your homework. So I'm going to take up homework for 3 days at a time, and hopefully that way I can get you to watch it a little bit more often. So question number 1 says, what functions do leaves serve? So leaves are really, when you think of a leaf, you have to think of photosynthesis, okay? So a leaf is an organ in a plant, and the function it serves more than any other function is just photosynthesis. It's trying to gather as much sunlight as it can and make as much sugar as it can, okay? How do monocot, and that should say like eudicot just means a true dicot leaf, differ? So if we look over here, we will see that this is on page 548. You'll see that you've got parallel venation. So if you were to look at a leaf in a monocot, you would have the veins, which are the xylem and the phloem, in parallel. And here you have the veins going in a net-like structure. Okay, so it says the eudicot leaf has a network of veins, so it's going out. Okay, I'm going to get back to this diagram in a minute, I believe. So next question is, describe the function of the following: the epidermis, the cuticle, the mesophyll, and the guard cells. Okay, so quick explanation here for you. The cuticle is a waxy layer. It's a fat. Fat and water don't mix, so this doesn't allow water to evaporate. Okay, so that's the point here. The water is going to be traveling in this area here, which you're going to see a video on in a few days. So the water is in the xylem cells, and we don't want water traveling through here from a high concentration to a lower concentration. So what the plant does is it makes this waxy layer called the cuticle, and it prevents evaporation of water. Then always under the cuticle, you'll have one layer of upper epidermis. That's only one layer thick because we want to get the sun into this layer here. So when you see palisade, always think photosynthesis. P for palisade, P for photosynthesis. These little green guys are showing you the number of chlorophyll in there. So there would be tons and tons of chlorophyll in this layer. The palisade layer is there so that the sunlight can come through here and photosynthesis can occur in these chloroplasts. All right, and then your spongy area serves a purpose because it does have chlorophyll. You can see that. All right, there is some, it's called spongy parenchyma or spongy mesophyll. It has air spaces, okay, and these air spaces are super important because what they do is they allow carbon dioxide in there, and carbon dioxide is going to get converted into sugar. So if this was filled with jam-packed like the palisade layer is or the epidermal layer is, you wouldn't be able to get carbon dioxide in there. And if you can't get air in there, the carbon dioxide is literally converted into sugar. The plant wouldn't be able to make sugar. So that's left open on purpose. And then again, in this layer, you have your veins. So you've got your xylem and your phloem. So this is going to bring water into the equation, right? And then this is going to take away the sugar, and you're going to see that, okay? So as sugar is made, sugar is going to get transported out of the leaf via the phloem, but the much needed water for the photosynthesis equation is going to be brought in here, all right? And then, so photosynthesis equation, just quickly. Okay, so again, I'm trying to keep this as quick as possible because I know you guys are antsy. It's June and you want to be done. So we've got 6 CO2 plus 6 H2O for photosynthesis. Okay, carbon dioxide comes in via the stomata. This comes in from the xylem. Okay, and then this is literally going to get converted into some form of a sugar. I'm going to say glucose, okay, but it can be any sugar. And then we're going to have oxygen as a waste product, okay? So this is the equation for photosynthesis. Please don't leave for you without knowing it. All right, and what we also need here, or not, sorry, 3U without knowing it, you need some light energy. Without this energy is converted into this form of energy. So light energy is converted into chemical energy, and we need water to do that, and we need carbon dioxide to provide the carbon. Okay, so that's the purpose the leaf serves. The cuticle, we've got a cuticle down there as well to protect against evaporation. And I do want to just notice or make mention that you have 2 guard cells, so the plant has 2 guard cells, okay? And the guard cells are right here and right here. So the guard cells will open when the weather is really nice and moist and humid, but it will close on a really hot, dry day or just a hot day, so that the stomata, the guard cells will swell up and close the stomata. Okay, and they do that so it prevents evaporation of water again. The plant desperately needs to hang on to water. So when it's really hot, water evaporates more quickly, and the plant doesn't want to lose water, so it closes the stomata or the stoma. All right, and how it does that is by swelling the guard cells up. So it actually brings water into the guard cells and they swell up. Okay, so that answers question 4. So I went over all the functions of the leaf. Question 5 says, describe how sub-zero temperatures can affect leaves. So sub-zero temperatures, if the leaf doesn't have a nice waxy cuticle, like a really thick one, like a needle in an evergreen tree, then it will have to lose its leaf, because if not, the leaf would suffer lots of damage, just like we would get frostbite. It's very similar. This is an organ that can have damage done to it with sub-zero temperatures. So what these guys do then is an adaptation where they lose their leaves in the fall. Okay, as the temperatures are falling, the plant will lose its leaf. All right, and then question B says, describe the adaptation that angiosperm trees have to cope with below freezing temperatures, and explain how this adaptation helps the plants. So they obviously have a very thick cuticle. They can produce chemicals that are anti-freezing, okay, and that helps the plant to be able to maintain photosynthesis all year long. And the fact that they can photosynthesize all year long is really beneficial to the world, because we have in Canada a lot of boreal forests where they're photosynthesizing all year long and providing people with oxygen, which is much needed right now with a growing population. And then number 7 says, you are given the leaves of a plant from a desert environment and one from a rainforest. Predict the differences you would see in the leaves that would make it adapted to its environment. So if you have a leaf in a rainforest is an area where you're going to be getting rain every single day. Okay, literally the rain will be coming down. So in this case, the leaf is not going to have a very thick cuticle, because it's not afraid of losing water. If anything, it wants to lose a little bit of water, because it doesn't want those air spaces filled up with water. If the airspace fills up, carbon dioxide cannot go in, and the plant literally drowns, just like you and I would if our lungs were filled with water. Okay, so those air spaces are very valuable. So thinner cuticle in a rainforest. And then it says desert environment. In a desert, water might come once every 2 months. So in a desert, you want to have a very thick cuticle to prevent against water loss. And if we had more time, I would show you the location of the stomata is actually different in a leaf that is adapted to dry conditions versus adapted to conditions where it gets lots and lots of water, like a water plant. So in some cases, the stomata is actually hidden in the leaf. Okay. All right, moving on to stems, that set of homework. It says, what functions do plant stems fulfill for the plant? So there's a beautiful summary right here. Stems connect the vascular tissue from shoot to root. They raise and support the plant. So in other words, they help the plant to get sunlight, because if the plant is supported, it can grow. And they offer shoots so that the reproductive structures can be seen and can have support as well. Okay, if the stem has any type of a chloroplast in it or a chromoplast, it can certainly perform photosynthesis. All right, that's not going to be the case when you've got bark, but it certainly is the case if you've got a really like herbaceous, a soft stem. Okay, they can store water and they transport carbohydrates. So these are all the features that are really important with stems. Now, why do you have to know about all these? Because you're not going to understand the transport lesson if you don't understand that plants have all these specialized tissues, okay? So even if it's super, super boring for you, which I get, you have to know that plants have all these tissues before you can understand how these tissues help the plant to live. All right, so then I asked you to do question 2A. So what is cork cambium and what does it do? Cork cambium is a form of meristematic tissue. So meristematic is M-E-R, mer, I-S-T-E-M-I-C. Meristematic tissue is a form of tissue in a plant that is completely responsible for growth. So we don't keep our stem cells. These are like stem cells in plants. So what is cork cambium? It's a form of meristematic tissue that makes the cork or the bark. Okay, so it makes the bark on the outside of the plant. The bark on the outside of the plant, we have a picture here, is very, very protective for the plant. So it allows protection against like rabbits and things that might want to eat this for nutrition in the winter. So it doesn't allow the rabbit to get to the inner core of the plant, okay, and destroy the valuable tissue. And then, do all plants have cork cambium? No, they do not. So if you think about your plants, if you go outside right now and you look at shrubs, or maybe not right now, but soon, you look at the shrubs that are growing outside, some are going to have a green stem, okay, like this right here. Now, this is not one of the plants that you're going to see. I was going to teach you the adaptation lesson with all my plants, and I will take some of these up later when you see me in the next video. But this is like a herbaceous, okay? So this doesn't have cork on the outside. When you see a plant like this that's green on the stem, you're not going to see any form of cork, okay, or bark. All right, and then very important question here. Do mature cells of xylem tissue have nuclei? No, they don't. Xylem tissue is completely empty at maturity, because it's a lot easier for the plant to drink with an empty straw than it would be to have a full straw of all kinds of organelles. So just think about that. If you want to drink something with a straw, you want to have your straw empty, not all clogged up. And so the xylem is completely empty at maturity. It's dead, it's hollow. And then, do mature cells of phloem tissue in angiosperms have nuclei? They have to distinguish between angiosperms and gymnosperms. Angiosperms, remember, are flowering plants. Gymnosperms are seeding plants, but they don't have flowers. So your evergreen plants, for instance, your things that produce cones are gymnosperms. Angiosperms do not have nuclei. Their phloem does not have nuclei at maturity. What it has is a companion cell, which is a cell that sits right beside it. And the companion cell has a nucleus, and it does the thinking and it instructs the phloem on what to do. All right, so that takes care of stems. And now we go on to roots. What are the biological functions of root plants? Well, for one thing, you have to think that they're bringing water in, okay? So super, super important function. They bring water into the plant. They also keep the plant anchored. So I guess just as importantly, they keep the plant anchored. But I just want to show you something super quickly here too. So I've got a plant here that I would normally show you. When we would do plant adaptations, we would have a lab on that. And just so you know, you might think that every single plant has to have a root, but here is an air plant, okay? And this plant would just tumble around and it would collect water through here. So I have to give this guy like a little water bath every other day at least, because it doesn't have a single root. This is just like extensions from the plant, but it doesn't have roots on it. So this guy just doesn't have roots, and it just absorbs sunlight through the green places, and I have to give it water, and it absorbs water through diffusion or osmosis into the rest of the body structure. So if it does have roots, though, going back to plants that have roots, they anchor the plant. Okay, that plant is not anchored, obviously. It'll just be passed around by the wind, and they allow for water to go into the plant. Super important, okay? And they also absorb minerals. Minerals are absorbed so that water follows to dilute the mineral. Draw a diagram of a fibrous root system. In what plant group are fibrous root systems found? So fibrous root systems are going to be found in angiosperms, okay? A fibrous root system looks like, oh, they don't have it in here. Oh, there's one, okay? So here's a fibrous root system right here. So when you get all these little white fibers. So typically what you would think of if you think of a root, okay? If you think of a carrot, that's a taproot. If you think of, here's a fibrous root system, okay? Right here, fibrous, and then this is our taproot. Different strategies. This is going to grow down, lower, and really anchor that plant in. And what it's aiming for is to get to the soil that's more wet near the water table. This is stretching out. So after rainfall, this is going to be shallow, and its strategy is gather as much water as you can after that rainfall, but don't anchor yourself down too deeply. This one has the opposite strategy. Let's try and get towards that water table. You can grow fibrous roots off a taproot. That's also a possibility. So you've seen your fibers and your taproots. Draw a labeled diagram of longitudinal section of a generalized root. So this is what we're asking you to do, or I'm asking you to do. Be able to label this, okay? If you drew it, that's super fantastic, because that's the education you want to get. What we're showing you here is a monocot root versus a dicot root. So notice in the monocot root, okay? You have your cortex, and then you've got your phloem and your xylem, okay, in the center. That's a monocot. In a dicot root, you're going to see this vascular cylinder, and the xylem and the phloem are actually contained in this cross-like structure, okay? So in a typical year, I would have asked you to identify the different types of roots. I might still give you a picture, but likely not, okay? I'm not going to very likely test you on something like that. You have the diagrams in front of you if you need them, but just keep in mind, this one has the cross in it. This is the dicot. The monocot has an organization around the inside of the parenchyma, all right? So that's what we're asking you to draw there. And then how can you tell the difference? I just showed you. Okay, one has a cross, one does not. And that's the end of the homework.